entering the Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience mini weekend version for the rankings update and the full injury report. Plus, we're going to look at some cheap wide receivers that have opened up on DraftKings, maybe some props, and whatever else that we want to get into. You can always hit the time codes to jump around, to need to go, to where you need to be. All right, smash the like, sub to the channel. While you are here, all of the rankings, all of the cheat sheets available down in the description. The rankings have direct links, and all of the rest of the links are in the Mayo Media newsletter, as will the updated injury report be the moment that I update it. There'll be a new one coming out on Saturday evening, so go sub. It's completely free. Just type in your email at Mayo Media on Substack, and boom, you'll be good to go. I'll update those again on Sunday morning as well. So just to make sure that you have all of the information you need. But quickly, let's get to it. Jump over to the Mayo Media newsletter and the updated injury report for week number 5. At running back, Saquon is going to be a game time decision. Jonathan Taylor is healthy to play, but he too is right now uncertain to play. He will be a game-time decision. Jahmyr Gibbs, I wrote him down as a game-time decision solely because he left practice on Friday with a hamstring injury. We've just seen this happen 3 or 4 times throughout the course of the season already, that someone gets a hamstring injury sometime during the week. They don't practice after. We think they're going to be fine. Then, oh, they're not playing. So more David Montgomery in your life is probably going to be the move. Now, if I get more word on whether Gibbs is going to play or whether he's not going to play, it could affect how David Montgomery moves up or down in the rankings this week. Gibbs is still in at the moment. However, Javonte Williams returned to practice on Friday. I thought he was going to miss like 2 weeks, but apparently his hip flexor is okay. He is still a game-time decision. Probably wouldn't play him. Jaleel McLaughlin is already rumored to be getting more snaps than him anyway to preserve Javonte Williams. At that point, you think you would just sit him. That would make the most sense, but that's not even until the late set of games either. So unless I wouldn't hold out hope for him to begin with in terms of playing this guy on your fantasy roster this week. But if you have to, you got to have backup option in. It probably decreases the amount of Jaleel McLaughlin touches as well. Eli Mitchell is out for the 49ers on Sunday Night Football. Miles Sanders, Ramondre Stevenson, Justice Hill, and Keaton Mitchell are all expected in. Keaton Mitchell became a hot pickup this week. He's been activated from IR for the Ravens. Just another name to throw into that backfield of absolute losers who don't do anything. Like, Gus Edwards is going to be your best option for basically the entire year if he's healthy, and he's still kind of useless to begin with. So really wouldn't worry about the Ravens backfield. Jeff Wilson still needs to be activated to play in Week 5. That can still happen as of Sunday morning, so keep an eye out on him. Wouldn't expect him to have that big of a role if there's nothing coming out about him yet. Eckler's on bye, should be good to go for Week 6. Jamal Williams is still on injured reserve. I believe he can come off next week. Could be Week 7, though. Either way, Alvin Kamara is the man. He's back. So that's a guy that you want in the Saints backfield. Khalil Herbert and Roshan Johnson, both injured on Thursday Night Football. Roshan will probably have to pass a concussion, although when we get to tight ends, you'll see that no player has gotten a concussion 1 week past protocol and then played the following week, although Luke Musgrave is on pace to do that this week because it's Thursday to Monday night. That big of a gap actually did seem to allow it. All the rankings in the newsletter as well. Zay Jones, game time decision for London game, and Khalil Shakir is expected out with a concussion in that game, but maybe he can pass British protocol and he can play. Traylon Burks out. Amon-Ra St. Brown expected out. We'll run the sims on the rest of the Lions receiving core to see how that shakes out going forward. T. Higgins is weird. He practiced on Friday. He's a game-time decision, but he's probably going to be out because he has like broken ribs or something like that, or he's going to be terrible if he plays. I wouldn't play him either way, and he's in the late set of games, so you're going to have to wait around for him. Just make better options. Cooper Kupp is in. McVay says that he is not on a snap count. I don't know why McVay would just be offering up information like that, so he could be lying or not. Kupp, I have ranked at number 12 in the rankings right now. Claypool was traded to Miami. I don't think he's playing this week. Jameson Williams should be back, albeit on limited snaps, but they might need him if Amon-Ra is truly going to be out. Jonathan Mingo, past concussion protocol. He is in for the Panthers. Quez Watkins and Rashad Bateman are both in. Odell Beckham is expected to play with this ankle injury. At least that's what he says. Juwan Jennings, ditto for Sunday Night Football. And the 49ers take a look at Mike Evans in the following week. He hurt his hamstring in week number 4. Obviously, he's he's on bye, but monitor his status going forward. Pat Firemouth is out 2 to 3 games, so he is not playing this week. Juwan Johnson's also out for the New Orleans Saints. That probably means that Jimmy Graham scores a touchdown for reasons unknown for the Saints. Why is he still in football? Probably to catch the first touchdown and rip our hearts out if we bet on that game. Luke Musgrave is in for Monday Night Football with a concussion. Irv Smith is in for the Bengals. He will return after missing the past 2 weeks. So Joe Burrow does have a few more targets. Donald Parham hurt his wrist last week. He is on bye this week. Derek Carr is expected to start for the Raiders Monday night. We should have for the Saints on Sunday, not Monday night, for the Saints on Sunday at New England. Kenny Pickett, Matt Stafford, Jimmy Garoppolo. That's Monday night, all expected to be starting. Geno Smith and Deshaun Watson, both on bye, should be starting in week 6. Don't really need to worry about the Sanderson Farms too much at this point, but now we can jump over to the rankings, all up on DKNation.com if you're looking for them. And like you said, all the lists are in the newsletter. They're down in the description as well. No real big changes here to anything. I did boost up David Montgomery to number 11 in the rankings. I could potentially see him going even higher than that. Devin Achane is number 13 in the rankings. What I quickly wanted to do was run the Sims on what everything looks like in terms of the projections this week and what we're seeing. We don't have Barkley in at the moment. I took Barkley out of my rankings too. I just don't know if he's going to play or not. We can we'll do DraftKings scoring. It doesn't really matter. And we can do Sunday and Monday games. So the remaining games that are left, we'll run this slate 10,000 times and just see what the medium projections are going to be. Loves David Montgomery as a play. Best play on the slate in terms of DraftKings. But in terms of our projections, this is what we're looking at in terms of for the overall projections this week. You can see Christian McCaffrey rates out at number 1. That's 27 points with a rushing bonus. So -3 off that for your season-long leagues. But still, that'd be 24 points. Bijan at 20 points. David Montgomery at 18 points. Josh Jacobs, Achane at number 5. Pollard, Henry, Mixon, Swift, Karen Williams. So all the guys that kind of populate the top. Breece Hall was the real interesting one, I think, this week. Ditto for Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce projected for 17 carries, only 74 yards through the simulations and under 2 catches. That only rates out to be 14 points when you don't even give him half a touchdown in this game. But if Atlanta's defense sort of falters, he might end up being a nice pivot off of the Stroud stacks that Tambo and I built on Friday. It just seems to be that could be where it's going. So these are the names that continue to pop up at the top of the running back situation going into the week. You can see Breida is one that I actually just wanted to take a quick look at because I always spell his name wrong. No, let's just put in Matt Breida. So this is what Matt Breida is looking at $5,200. This is against the Dolphins in pure catch-up mode. So 46 yards on the ground on almost 11 carries and 3.6 targets. That would equal out to be 3 catches for 28 yards. That's almost 14 DraftKings points and 14 PPR points overall for your season-long league. That's more projected than Connor, which I don't agree with, but hey, here we are. Gus Edwards, Miles Sanders, Jalen Warren, Alexander Madison, Jahmyr Gibbs still projected to be in, Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor, assuming that he ends up going and gets half of the workload, Javonte Williams on a gimped-up knee, a gimped-up hip with 2 other guys trying to steal his carries. Like, Breida's not a bad option this week should Saquon Barkley end up sitting out. And we can go and take a look a little bit closer and examine how those numbers are being derived. We can see this is the game. This is the breakdown. You have Matt Breida, 44% of the team's rushing share. Daniel Jones up at 30%, one of the best projected quarterbacks of the week. But with Breida, 44% of the market share. Gary Brightwell's at 25. I would still expect Matt Breida to have way more carries than him, and only 11% of the target share. And that's still getting him to 14 points, which is pretty good in this circumstance. Just to go back and look at the projections for a second, take a look at the quarterbacks. You can see, where's Daniel Jones? Daniel Jones rates out number 7 this week. He's $5,800. That's why he's such a value in daily fantasy, especially on DraftKings. But you're looking at a situation where he is let's see here, 31 attempts, 22 completions, only 236 yards and 1 touchdown, almost a pick is what he's projected at, but over 50 yards on the ground and 1/3 of a touchdown really makes him one of the better values. He's projected very similarly, honestly, to Jordan Love, who's directly below him and is playing on Monday Night Football. But the rushing attempts are a little bit down, but he's projected for more touchdowns and fewer interception in terms of fractional. So that's where it gets them right around the same number. But just those 52 yards rushing, I believe that's the most on the slate. Yeah, Jalen Hurts, Daniel Jones, Lamar, Anthony Richardson, Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love, Zach Wilson. And then Russell Wilson at 20.4. Russell Wilson prop might be a good look here in that game in terms of rushing, just because the Jets pass rush is so fierce and the Broncos offensive line is so bad that could be a look that you go to. We'll get into the props a little bit later on, but I just wanted to spell that out in terms of why the Sims really love Daniel Jones. I mean, he's 7th in terms of raw fantasy points, but again, he's only $5,800, meaning that you can squeeze him in with a lot of people. Stafford at 56 is also a tremendous value as well. Granted, you don't really know what you're going to get out of Cooper Kupp or how that distribution is going to go, which makes it a little bit trickier, but he is projected for over 300 yards passing this week. That is 2nd on the slate. If you're looking for some good prop bets from that game, just Stafford overs on completions and yardage. You can't run on the Eagles at all this year, but you can pass all over them, and no one runs more plays per game than the Rams do at the moment. Wide receiver rankings, I had to take out Amon-Ra St. Brown. So that sucks. You can see where I've placed everyone. Josh Reynolds is now number 29. I would expect him to lead this backfield. I actually moved Khalif Raymond above Jamison Williams in this spot just because I don't know how many snaps Williams is going to play, and Raymond always still a lot of bubble screens, a lot of deep plays. Those are kind of the Khalif Raymond package when you really think about it. And then you have Jamison Williams. He comes in at 67. It's basically boom or bust for him. He's going to be like 3 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown or 0. And that's just a tough spot to be in. Honestly, the big winner in all of this is the Laporta potty. But this is something interesting you can do if you're just really looking to find one team in isolation and trying to find everything out from them. What you can do is go to the Sim Runner. We'll click on that, and then we'll jump on over to the showdown performances of that game. So if you just scroll down, you can go into Captain Showdown mode. I mean, that's full point PPR on DraftKings. That's the easiest one to do it with. And we'll just take a scroll down, try to look for the game that we want. Do they actually not have that game on there? Great. Smart. Oh, no, there it is. Detroit and Carolina. Click on that and just go take a look at the distributions that we have on the go right now. You see a lot of red right now. Gibbs, Reynolds himself is banged up. He was a full participant on Friday, so I wouldn't be too concerned about him. However, you have Jamison Williams, who was a full participant on Friday, but we don't know about his conditioning. Amon-Ra probably going to be out in this game. So that leaves the distribution. Reynolds, 20% of the market share of targets. Laporta, 22%. Raymond, 17%. Mav Jones, 7%. Antoine Green at 3%. Jamison Williams at 3%. Because, again, it's hard to project. It's a really tricky scenario when we think about this. Turn off Pro Mode to make everything go faster. We'll run the Sims on this one and see how it goes. So we can skip the optimal results. We really don't care about the showdown purposes of there. But what we do care about are the wide receivers and tight ends in terms of receiving. And now you can see that Thielen is projected for the most in this game. I mean, maybe you can see it. Maybe if I put the screen over, you can see it a little bit. That's 13.8 points. That would be 5 for 62, 1/3 of a touchdown. I mean, that really feels like the most median projection you could ever get in this circumstance. After that, it's Laporta. You see Josh Reynolds, almost 4 catches, 54 yards, 12.3 fantasy points. Pretty good. Khalif Raymond is not that far behind that, though. 3.5 catches, 50 yards receiving, 10.5 fantasy points. I understand that you can't have 3.5 catches, but that's just, we're talking about projections here to see how guys are popping up, but it's really those two over everyone else. Now, you can play around with all of these if you have a better feel of how the Detroit passing game is going to go. RunTheSims.com/Mayo gets you that discount where you can jump into all of it. I mean, it gives you access to every single one of the tools on Run the Sims, but this is a great way to make some lineup decisions if that's really the path that you want to go down. Let's go to, so that's where they end up getting ranked where they are. Quarterbacks and tight ends, there's not really much ado about anything here. We take a look at the quarterback rankings again up on DraftKings Nation. if the best of the crappy plays is going to be Daniel Jones. I still like Brock Purdy against Dallas. I feel like I'm on an island on that. And then you have CJ Stroud. I bumped down Goff a little bit. I might even bump him down a little bit more to maybe below Matthew Stafford, who is banged up but is going to play. Just losing Amon-Ra is so tough in that situation. I know they're still big favorites against Carolina, but taking away a team's number one receiving option is going to potentially, it has to hurt the upside of the quarterback who's throwing him the ball. I don't think there's any more you can really say about that. You could sell me on Laporta being the number 2 tight end this week behind Travis Kelce. I have him at number 4 right now, but I think this is the big 4 riding forward, at least for right now. Kelce, Hawkinson, Andrews, and Laporta. Kittle, Ingram, and Waller are kind of on their own tier. And other than that, it's just like, do what you will. I saw Hendicott, or whatever the hell that guy's name is. No, that's a golfer. Anyway, one of the tight ends on Dallas is out. Jake Ferguson continues to see work. I like him as a top 10 option this week. Decent look in DraftKings Showdown this week as well. And in terms of streaming defenses, like the one that's probably still out there if you need them is Arizona. I just really like them to beat up on Joe Burrow this week in terms of generating pressure, generating mistakes that are widely available. Other than that, I mean, everyone went and picked up Miami this week. Denver against Zach Wilson is actually a really nice spot because everyone dropped Denver. No one wants to use Denver. They have a historically bad defense, but they're playing Zach Wilson, which can go well, very, very well, very, very quickly, as we've seen in the past. I do want to jump back over and go to these cheap wide receivers. Because a few things have opened up. When I went over the injury report, there's the betting option. Let's see here. Let's go to DFS tools and we'll go to the classic slate optimizer. I don't know why the premium plans, you can get 10% off all those plans if you really want to. $19 per week, get your discount on it. Boom. It's still less than $20. You're fine per week if you do play some volume and do want to get it on these tools. I would just do it for the prop sniper alone, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's awesome. It's been printing recently, but this is just the main slate. It's a tough main slate. There's only 10 games. Not all of them are really all that great. So let's go to points per dollar. So Khalif Raymond, all of a sudden, because of this Amon-Ra news, jumps out to be the best points per dollar play on the slate. So this has a few ramifications because, as you can see, all of a sudden, Wendell Robinson doesn't pop up as highly in this. And when we did the Friday show with myself and Tambo, it's Wandale. Yeah, Wandale is still projected to be 16% owned for the moment. Those will get updated again. It's not like he's a bad play at 2.5%, but there's just a bunch of Wendell Robinsons now. So Raymond at 33, Josh Downs at 37, Calvin Austin again, even with Kenny Pickett starting at 35. Don't love him a ton. Rashee Rice is only $3,600. Then you have Robert Woods at $4,000. Those are your 5 best values on the board. I talked about Wendell Robinson, but you can see that he's way down here. Him and Tyler Boyd are kind of the same points per dollar type player. They actually factor out to be exactly the same at 2.52 points per dollar, which is a good points per dollar. But like Rondale Moore's upside and even median is higher than that at $3,200. Mingo, now that he's back, 2.73 at $3,300. Like all these guys are better plays than super chalky Wendell Robinson when we take a look at it. So you need to be cognizant of that when you're building your lineups. Now, maybe everyone just piles off of Wendell, but they'll probably pair him with, I'm guessing people will pair him with Daniel Jones to play Tyreek Hill or A-Chain or whoever it is on the Dolphins side that they want. It's a mini stack, it's cheap, and you can have the most expensive piece of the Dolphins that you want. Or even if you use HN, then you can have a $6,100 running back to go with a $5,800 quarterback and a $3,000 receiver. Then you can get like Justin Jefferson and Travis Kelce into your lineup. Bijan Robinson and Nico Collins, if that's the way that you wanted to play it with some correlation. There is one guy that I did want to take a look at, though. And we'll see. There he is right there. Chris Moore. So Chris Moore's not very good. I mean, he's fine, I suppose. Let's go Chris Moore, ESPN game log. And you can see that any Titans receiver is not going to be great. But Treylon Burks is not playing in this game. You can see he's had over 40 yards in each of his past 3 games. Now, 3 targets in each of the past 2. But the thing you need to look at with this, they were very low volume throwing games, which seems insane considering when they lost 27-3 to Cleveland. You think, oh man, Tannehill must have thrown 40 times trying to catch up. No, because that's not what happens with the Titans. But this could be a very back and forth style game with the Colts this week. And with no Treylon Burks, even with Treylon Burks, like Treylon Burks was getting a bunch of targets, but Chris Moore was actually catching the ball. So if you can squeeze a touchdown out of him, I know it's Nick Westbrook-Ikena who's been the one catching the touchdown, especially in the red zone. That's what we saw last week. I do think that Chris Moore is a viable option. And he's a viable option if you want to pay down, I guess what I'm saying. Where you have these guys at the top, they're all fine. Like Raymond could break a big one. He could get you 0 points, but you could see that the ownership is starting to file in. I don't think that these are going to be exactly what we see on Sunday morning, 7, 8, 8, 9%. That's probably really going to be like 5, 4, 6, whatever it is. And that's not debilitating, but you're actually going to get Chris Moore at, we're saying projected ownership is 2.6%. I can almost guarantee you that's less than 1% because most people don't even know that Chris Moore plays for the Titans. So that's a real problem when you're trying to construct lineups. And no one is stacking up the Titans. I don't think you need to stack them up. But if you're just going to play roulette with all of these cheap type receivers, you just pray for some touchdowns in this game. We take a look back at that Titans blowout game against the Browns too. Tannehill threw it 25 times. He did get sacked 5 times, so he's probably too terrified to do anything. But even in that game, 3 targets for Chris Moore last week in a game where they got up by a bunch and ran the ball 33 times. Still, Tannehill passed 25 times. Chris Moore, 3 targets. He had the 1 catch for 44 yards, but again, over 44 yards. Yes, Nick Westbrook-Ikena is overall the better play. The big difference is going to be when you take a look at Westbrook-Ikena, he's $3,500. So if you need the savings, you go to Chris Moore. If you can afford the $3,500, then you go to Nick Westbrook-Ikena because the touchdown, upside is going to be there. But if you do need to squeeze in one of these cheap guys, that is the actual man. I would take my chances with Chris Moore over Wendell Robinson. That's another tool that we can use here. Bear with me for a second because I haven't used this one in a while. Is it under the player props tools? The rangefinder is what I want to look for. NFL prop tool and rangefinder. We can put these guys next to each other. Player 1 will go with Chris Moore. And maybe the projections don't like him as much as I might actually like him, and we'll see. And we'll go with Wendell Robinson. We'll put them up next to each other, and we'll just go full point PPR scoring, and then we'll calculate that number and see what pops up and see what we have to wait in because they're the same price point. I believe they're the same price point. Chris Moore is... All right, so let's take a look at it. Wendell's median is going to be a little bit higher, and his upside is 90th percentile. Actually sides with Chris Moore, just because that offense is still more vertical and can be a little bit better, which is kind of shocking to see. That you see that Wendell Robinson has an advantage, unless you're trying to get maximum upside. Then all of a sudden, Chris Moore becomes the better play. The median projection for both of them is 7.3 points for Wendell, and it's 5.9 points for Chris Moore. You can see that the win rate in a head-to-head, 58% of the time, Wendell Robinson is going to score more points than Chris Moore. That's okay. I'm not trying to tell you that Wendell Robinson is a worse raw fantasy points play. What I'm saying is that they're both probably not very good plays to begin with. You see, Chris Moore is, so they're the same price. They're both $3,000. The big difference is you're going to get one guy that's like 1% owned who projects median, and you don't really care about the median because if they score the median, they're useless anyway. And Wendell is going to be somewhere in double digits. So you're going to have 10 times as much ownership on one guy for one that doesn't even have a higher ceiling than the other guy and marginally outscores him. That's how, unless you were stacking up Daniel Jones and you needed one of their receivers, there's really no reason to go to Wendell Robinson instead of a Chris Moore, or if you had the $500, Nick Westbrook-Ikena, Mingo, any of these guys, just because they're going to be lower owned, you just get so much leverage off of Wendell. Then you just pray that Wendell doesn't score 2 touchdowns and absolutely ruin your weekend. But when was the last time Wendell Robinson ruined your weekend? When you didn't have money on him. When you have money on him, it ruins your weekend the entire time. When you don't have money on him, maybe it's a great thing. And maybe one of these other guys can come through for you. That's all I'm saying. If you need cheap receivers. Now, the strategy probably should be you don't need to have cheap receivers. But listen, people like to pay down. This is what they like to do. And we'll go with it. Let's talk some same game parlays. It's tough this week because we hit the one on the show last week. The only reason I'm running it back again because that London one hit and we missed the Sunday night one by just on Garrett Wilson. We had the under on receptions. We should have went under on yardage, and I think that we would have been good on that front. But when we're taking a look at this, let's take a look at the London game. Here's the problem. What we want to do, honestly, when we're using the prop sniper, you can see all the books are available here. You can see our projections, and maybe we'll get better lines, and it takes VIG into consideration as well when it's giving us a score. So as you can see, James Cook over receptions is even money at DraftKings. The over hits, let's see, receptions and yardage. The medium projection is 25. 16.5 is the over-under right now. You can go 17.5. So you can either pay VIG at a certain site, like minus 118 for over 16.5, or get an extra yard and pay even money and pay no VIG, which is what we're saying with our projections is actually the better bet. The problem is we have a 13.5 score. I'm always interested in the ones that are 20 or above. Even on Thursday Night Football, sometimes you get lucky. The only one that was up there was Khalil Herbert under rushing attempts of 12.5 and 11.5 were both very strong plays over 20%. And it came through because Khalil Herbert got hurt. But people don't tell you that. Now, just a reminder to everyone out there, okay? When you bet unders, some of your outs are injuries. So then you don't need to be the person who bets on overs that has to cry on the internet to sportsbooks that my bet got ruined because my player got hurt. You're allowed to bet unders. That's a thing that can happen. And when we run the simulations, injuries are included in that. They're not very high. They're higher for running backs than they are for any other position. It's weighted in like 2-3%. But that is one of the inherent advantages of betting unders, is that if a guy gets hurt, you instantly win if they see the field at all. So in this game, there's nothing really good from the Buffalo side. Nothing that you'd go out of your way to go play. Yeah, you could cobble one together with James Cook over receiving yards, Josh Allen over 259.5 passing yards, James Cook over receptions of 2.5. Like, those are good numbers, but they're not the super strongest plays we have. And then with Jacksonville, it's tougher because Christian Kirk receiving yards is only 13.7%. Like, that's not good at all. And that doesn't even factor in. This is factoring in Zay Jones not being. If Zay Jones does play, you probably just want to go under on all these Christian Kirk numbers. So we can cobble one together of what we think could be good. Like, I don't like this ETN 3.5 at all. Trevor Lawrence over interceptions could be a pretty good play if we look at it, but nothing stands out from that game. So let's just take all of the filters off and we'll just go over. You can see in the top right-hand corner, you can go to the compare odds between books or just go to the best bets. What are the answers to the test? So at what sportsbook can we go to? DraftKings has the best number on the board. This week, it's actually Tua over rushing yards. Good Lord, I don't like that at all. But the win percentage on it is 83%. The score is 28. That's where we want to be. So just blindly playing some of these together, you could have Tua rushing yards, Debo under 4.5 receptions. He was taken off the injury report, by the way. Again, the Jarek rushing yards, loves that. Bateman receiving yards, over, the line is 15.5. Loves the over on that, even though Bateman was taken off the injury report. So it hasn't been good for Bateman so far this season. Plus, he's dealing with that hamstring, so the re-aggravation factor is still there. But those are the strongest plays right now. It's not a good looking week full of anything that you're comfortable with, but like even the Tua rushing yards, do you really feel good about that? The projections, love it, but that's essentially all we can really get behind. I really wish I had ridden the best value on the board outside of the Khalil Herbert rushing yards on Thursday night was Sam Howell ladder over 300 passing yards. I think it ended up paying like 5.5 to 1 or something. That was too chicken to play it, but we can see there's a lot of Debo Samuel, very anti-Debo Samuel, very pro-Rashad Bateman if he gets himself in the game, although right now that's still considering that Odell Beckham is going to be out. If he plays, then everything is going to flop. So sometimes you need to put some context of what you know by like watching the show, understanding where the injuries are coming from, because until we officially know or don't know, then the final set of sims can't run. Rushes over. Like, I feel like this is a good one. Let's play around with this game. That's probably the game we want to do the same game parlay on. Let's try that. For this week, we'll go to Jets. Because I talked about Russell Wilson and his rushing yards. We'll go to the same game parlay feature at DraftKings Sportsbook. You always play at DraftKings Sportsbook. Fun place to play same game parlays. So we'll try this one out on for size. And we guess we can click on dynamic odds. Let's try that if this ever loads. My internet's not doing so great today. Probably why the upload time on the show is a little bit more. Maybe they've taken this one off the board. Let's see here. There we go. Let's go back to same game parlay. All the props are there, which is really weird. But nothing is coming up. Oh, there we go. I like the Jets to win the game. I like the Jets to cover the game, but we can get some alt totals in there as well. Did that go to the same game parlay? There we are. So, same game parlay. It's on. Do we want anytime touchdown score? What we want is Russell Wilson rushing yards over and Breece Hall rushing yards over. I think are the two things that we want to play in this game just on the onset. And probably Tyler Conklin, don't know about 27.5. Let's see, Russell Wilson rushing yards over 15.5. Let's do that. Zach Wilson over rushing yards, 9.5. We're already at plus 250. That's not bad so far. I said Breece Hall is a place that we want to be in. Let's try that one out too. We'll go over, over, over. Don't love all these overs, and we'll take a look back at the prop sniper, and we'll go by New York Jets and see what the best props are. So Zach Wilson rushes over 8.5 rushing yards at some other book. Now, that's actually pretty good. Over 8 and 10.5 rushing yards at plus money at another book. But you can see even the Zach Wilson rushing yards, lovely. People love that one. So let's see if we can find attempts on here. We'll go to rushing props. We got 3 of them in there. Alternate rushing yards. We don't want to get too greedy. Zach Wilson rushing attempts over 2.5. So we have that correlated with rushing yardage as well. So we have 2 Zach Wilson rushing props in. Over 2.5 rushes, over 9.5 rushing yards. Okay, that's looking pretty good to begin with, because as we can see, we got Zach Wilson at 4 projected rushes this week, and we have him at 21 rushing yards. Not bad. So that's how we're going to play that side of it. Other than that, we see the next biggest ones. Garrett Wilson under 4.5 receptions. Don't know if I love that one, but it's playing plus 140. That's why it's showing up as such a value. And our projection's at 4.7. So although we do have him projected over the number he's being listed at, because if you bet $100, you would get $140 in return, then it's actually a good betting value, even though it's likely to lose, which is interesting based on the money that you would get in return. Zach Wilson passing TDs over. Love Zach Wilson this week. I don't know if I want to go to the passing game here, but Breece Hall over receiving yards, 12.5. Breece Hall under 12.5 rushes. Do we have rushing yards? We got over for Dalvin Cook. So maybe it doesn't love the Breece Hall rushing as much as I do. Although Tyler Conklin under 27.5 receiving yards, although our number is higher because of the VIG. That wins. The over wins at 57%. That is not good enough to eat the juice at minus 114. Now we're just getting into complete coin flips. At least when we got near the top with these Zach Wilson props, we did pretty good. So we can take some of these off and go to the Denver side of things. And it did seem like let's see here. We can take off Breece Hall rushing yards because it didn't like that one at all. And we'll go to his receiving props, and it did like Breece Hall over 17.5 receiving yards. I believe that was the one that popped up. We can go back to that. We can go to Breece Hall, just take a look at all the Breece Hall props. Not great scores, but yeah, receiving yardage over 12.5 was his highest one. So we'll stick with that. Receptions over DraftKings has 1.5. That is a 66% winner. It's a bad correlation with what we're doing anyway. We have everything on, which is unfortunate. So we're just going to say over 17.5 receiving yards for, let's see, is that what we got? Receiving yards? We got 12.5 receiving yards for him. Okay, so that's not going to be a good number then. If it's going to be that high, that really got juiced up. So we're going to go take that one off. We don't want over under 17 receiving yards because our prop normally was, receiving yards over. There's a certain site that has it at 12.5 where it's a great play. You can see the receiving yards at 17.5 is actually a bad play at DraftKings. We're not going to throw that one on. Over 1.5 receptions is something that we're going to go back to, but it's minus 175. We'll see how that impacts everything. Or we can just keep it like this. Keep it pretty simple on the Jet side of things. We don't need to get greedy when we go through these. Although that's probably the entire point of it. Marvin Mims Jr., receiving yards, it's either going to be 0 or 120, although that ends up being the best score. Russell Wilson interceptions over. Russell Wilson passing yards under interceptions. I like his rushing yardage prop. I really don't care how a lot of the stuff ends up coming in, but maybe I don't want to play the Marvin Mims. I hate betting against these big play receivers, and we don't even see a DraftKings number that's like really acceptable to us up there, so we're not even going to worry about that one. Russell Wilson passing yards under, Russell Wilson interceptions over. That one I can get behind. And I think that actually kind of correlates well with our rushing yardage. So let's go to passing props, and we'll go to Russ Danger. Interceptions thrown over. So this is what we're doing. We're playing a 4-banger, 9-1 on this, over 15.5 rushing yards for Russell Wilson, over 9.5 rushing yards for Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson rushing attempts over 2.5, and then over Russell Wilson interceptions thrown at 0.5, 9-1, and you can backtrack that if you really wanted to. It is the over 0.5 one that really does get us there. If you just want to take off one of these, it correlates it back down to almost 4-1 if that's the way that you want to play it. Let's risk it. I mean, we're up money on same. We've done 2 same game parlays on this weekend show so far this season. We're 1 for 2, and I believe it was a plus 550. So we're going to be up money for a while until we get back down money, maybe start continuing to play some of these. And this 4-banger at almost 9-1 is maybe where we want to live this week. All right. I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe to the newsletter. That will come out on Saturday evening. A fresh batch with new information, updated injury report. Then if you bookmark that for later on the webpage, which you can find all down in the description, then you can get the update on Sunday morning as well when I just update it on the webpage. The rankings are down in the description. I need you to smash the like, sub to the channel, rate and review the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. While you're at it, there's always fun draws that go in if you help out the show, and rate and review everything for the audio podcast on Apple or Spotify, and runthesims.com/Mayo to get yourself that 10% off. All right. I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.